Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, Michigan rolling into 2025. It is so fascinating to listen to how the national media talks about this football team. I feel like there's such an emphasis on the questions that we have. And look, I ain't getting up here and saying that we don't have question marks about Michigan. You'd be starting a true freshman quarterback in Bryce Underwood. You have question marks about how good these wide receivers are. You have to replace Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Will Johnson on the defensive side of the football. Whenever I listen to people talk about Michigan, that's all the talk is. What if we just took 20 minutes still and focused on the reasons that Michigan can be really dang good in 2025? For as many question marks you have about this football team, if it all comes together, like there's a lot of reasons to believe in this Michigan team being really dang dangerous in 2025. And Dill, as Michigan fans, ain't a better way I'd want to spend my Friday night than talking about best case scenario for Michigan in 2025. Now, before we get into it, as always, the Michigan fans, appreciate you guys. It's been so fun talking this team, like going back to when Bryce committed and then the spring practice session, what Michigan did on the trail, now fall camp. The amount of support that the Michigan fans have shown the boys the last 8 months has been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, without further ado, I want to start with this. Look, we know as Michigan fans who watched every single snap of that 2024 season, we know the quarterback play is going to be better. Like regardless, true freshman, whatever, it's going to be better. The question is for Michigan, how much better will it be in 2025? I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot here. What, give me a stat line that you would expect from Bryce Underwood if we're finding ourselves in the college football playoffs in the month of December?
So what I'm going to give you is minimums. I think he's got to go over
Minimums.
100 yards passing. I think he's got to go over 20 touchdowns, I should say, throwing. I think he's
31.
got to go under 7 interceptions. And then he's probably got to hit at least 350 on the ground. And I think you're going to look at me and say like, oh, did you like JJ didn't put those numbers up in 2023? I think one thing Michigan fans might be underselling or underrating a little bit is how much I think Bryce needs to elevate this team a little bit. Because I look like, do I think they're 2023 good? I'm not sure their offensive line's 2023 good. That was a really good offensive line.
Sure.
Is their defense 2023 good? Not sure. That was probably the best defense I've ever seen in my lifetime. Like, I think this team probably does need the quarterback position to be a little bit more dynamic than Michigan typically has needed it over the past couple of years, just because I'm not sure those last couple of years were a really, really good team.
Yeah, I'll say this, and I think the Michigan. You said Michigan fans don't appreciate. I think the Michigan fans who watched that team in 2023 appreciate how good that defense was. It was special. Now, here's the only bone I have to pick. Right, touchdowns. I'm with that. Less than 7 interceptions. That's probably what you're looking for. I think the passing and rushing yards are a little bit more skewed. Bryce Underwood coming in as talented as this kid is as a thrower of the football. And look, I've watched more Bryce Underwood senior year stuff than I care to admit. This kid is way too dynamic of a runner to only have 350 yards on the ground. And Dill, like, what's the best thing you can do to settle in a freshman quarterback in the Big Ten? Let him go be an athlete. And I get it, because it's a fine line. Like you want to run Bryce, you want to utilize the athleticism, but you don't want him taking a ton of hits. Still, he's 6'4", 230 plus. That's what Sherrone Moore says, and he certainly looks it. I think the biggest difference between Bryce and JJ is, one, Bryce is a better athlete than JJ was, and that's saying something because JJ was a very good athlete. JJ, especially in his early years, was not a super big cat. Like you didn't want him taking a ton of hits. Look at Bryce and say, I think he's physically ready to take a little bit more contact in the 2025 year. And I guess it just comes down to, if he only finishes with 350 rushing yards, I feel like we're leaving a little bit on the table in terms of what this kid can be as an athlete, as a runner in this Michigan offense in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, the other side of that, though, is how many carries you're going to take from Haynes and Marshall. Like, those two, you talk about, like, the engine of Michigan.
Sure.
Like, those two are such good ball carriers. I'm so excited about what they can do. Like, how many carries are you going to take away from them?
It's not necessarily taken away, but I look at it and say he can the more you can get in Bryce involved in the run game, especially with some of that read option stuff, the more opportunity you're going to give to Marshall and Justice Haynes to be difference makers with the football in their hands. I feel like if you want to optimize Bryce Underwood and you want to optimize this Michigan offense, you have to utilize this kid as an athlete. I'll say this. Even when Drake May had a top 5 NFL draft, or excuse me, I mixed up the names here. Even when Chip Lindsey had a top 5 NFL draft pick back in North Carolina with Drake May, he still ran Drake May. And I think Chip Lindsey is going to look to utilize what Bryce can be as an athlete in this Michigan offense. Because Dill, project number one for Michigan, as much as people want to ask question marks about how good the wide receivers are, how excited we are about the vertical passing attack we could have in 2025, it starts with running the football and settling Bryce in. You got to use this kid, in my opinion, to get the run game
And
going.
that's all well and fair, but like, what do you think he needs to throw for? Because
All
I
right.
don't think these throwing numbers can be as low as I feel like you're kind of implying. Like,
It's
they
funny
need
because we have the same around the same total yards. I had 2,800 with 20 touchdowns. So we actually had very eerily similar numbers, but I had 500 plus rushing yards. So I just took 200 passing yards and just injected it into the rushing yards category. That's how I look at it. I think Bryce can go for more. I would like to see Bryce go for more. But if Michigan wants to be a playoff team, I think it starts with still running the football.
Yeah,
And
I
you
don't
have
think this passing attack, I just don't think you can be that mediocre. And like, even like Notre Dame, I don't think Notre Dame can get to the playoffs last year doing what they were doing without or through the Big Ten. Like, yes, they played inferior teams
sure.
for the most part. I'm not sure they're beating teams like Penn State and Ohio State consistently enough. I know they can get it done, but
Well,
I think
there's
it's
the thing
really
is
hard to
the
run
JJ
through.
McCarthy conversation, where it's like we when we need big time plays, JJ always came up with it. He could make the big time throws when we needed him. We just didn't have to ask him to do it all the time because we were so good running the football.
Because
To
that
me,
was
it's
a historically great team. I think this is a team that needs to be more balanced. I think the throwing numbers need to be pretty impressive.
all right.
Otherwise, I don't think they're going to score enough points to be a perennial playoff team
Okay,
in this season.
that's fair. Let's move on to wait, pause. Michigan fans, because me and Dill have argued. This ain't the first time we've gotten into this argument. Got to hear from y'all in the comment section. Like, what do you need the stat line for Bryce Underwood to be? Please let it fly. Kind of fix the stalemate my brother and I have been in for literally the last couple of months. All right, wide receiver position. I'll ask you this: do you think the pass catchers are better than we had last year?
Net, I don't know, because Colston Loveland's gone and he
It
was
has,
so good. But I look at how much better equipped this room is as like a team. And the problem was last year they didn't have a boundary player. I mean, Colston Loveland was
yeah,
the best boundary wide receiver by a mile on Michigan last year. It's really hard to play when you're basically trotting 3 slot receivers out there. And that's kind of where it felt like Michigan was at with Morris, Samaj, and Freddie Moore. Like, I think they need Donovan McCulley to be kind of what Michigan's saying he is
dude.
coming out of camp. Because if you don't have a good boundary receiver, it's just hard to create space. And Michigan had no space.
That's what I'm most excited about. And let's just start with this. This is Sherrone Moore's words, not mine. Donovan McCulley gives us the vibes or the impact, I believe he said, that Nico Collins gave us. If that's the case, yeah, Michigan's wide receivers probably better than they were last year. Now, is Donovan McCulley going to be a Nico Collins kind of guy? That's still to be determined. I think you're exactly right. This offense needs to manufacture more space in the passing attack. And it starts with Donovan McCulley being that threat vertically that we did not have last year. Because, Dill, it's less about is Freddie Moore and Samaj Morgan, are they going to be better football players than they were in 2024? Which they very well could. They're both only going into year 3. More importantly, can we put them in better spots? Like, give Samaj Morgan more opportunities with the football in space. The same thing goes for Freddie Moore. They're really dynamic with the football in their hands. I mean, I go back to Samaj, they'll go back to the 2023 national championship team. Like, Sherrone Moore was trotting this kid out as a true freshman and designing up opportunities for him.
That's because they were NFL boundary wide receivers, and that just wasn't the case last year.
I
So
agree.
that to me, I feel like Donovan McCulley, as much as like we do talk about him, we talk about a lot of other guys. He might be like the most important player on this Michigan team because if he doesn't work, I
Yeah.
don't know that you have a great answer for like creating the space that Chip Lindsey's been able to create
Yep.
consistently over his career because he's always had it feels like a pretty good wide receiver one on the boundary who can be a problem.
I will say I do think Chip Lindsey as a play caller is way better at creating space. He'll use the wide split. Still, even at North Carolina last year, like North Carolina did not have good quarterback play last year. They went through multiple different quarterbacks, had their QB1 go down week 1. 1,600 yards after the catch last year. That's in comparison to Michigan's 800. Doubled it. Can Chip Lindsey give guys like Samaj Morgan and Freddie Moore opportunities with the football in space? It's not necessarily like our wide receiver room is better on paper, but they can be put in better spots to be successful than they were in 2024. Defense. This is a fascinating storyline, man. Like, can the defense, and there's a lot of assumptions going on. All right, when you lose Mason Graham, when you lose Kenneth Graham, when you lose Will Johnson, there's no way that the Michigan defense can hold serve. I'm starting to buy into it a little bit, man. Not only can Michigan's defense hold serve, can it be better in 2025? Dill, if I were to ask you, hey, Friday night, half glass full kind of guys right now, give me the elevator pitch of Michigan's defense getting better in 2025.
I mean, it's all about continuity in the back end because I'm not sure you get better on the defensive line realistically because you keep saying like Kenny Grant, Mason Graham. Yeah, those guys were awesome. Josiah Stewart was a freak show last year, too.
He's really
good.
You
lose 3 really productive players. But I mean, the back end didn't play great for the first 7 or 8 weeks of that season. Like, there were a lot of breakdowns, like really bad in certain situations.
Third downs.
In long, especially. It felt like probably one of the worst in the league or worst in the country, I should say. You can't be that. I think continuity in the back end should make a lot of difference in those situations and allow them to take a big step forward and look more like they did last year at the end of the year.
The people in the comment section, the people in the comment section got me raising my hand up like I'm in 5th grade, so I'm not interrupting you, which I did. And I agree with what you were saying. I want to talk more about the third downs were a joke last year. As good as Michigan was, they were 82nd in the country on third downs. What happens if they get monsterly better? Like that's huge for this Michigan defense. And it gives you a little bit more time to get home with the pass rush. Still, Michigan was extremely disruptive up front on the defensive line. They couldn't create as many negative plays. If I were to told you that Josiah Stewart, Mason Graham, Kenneth Graham, Derek Moore, that was your starting 4 on the defensive line, they stayed healthy all year. We were outside of the top 30 in sack percentage. If the secondary gets a little bit more sticky, gives the pass rush a little bit more time to get home, you might not necessarily have the horses, but can you be more productive than you were last year? Maybe. Dill, here's the storyline for me. So it's all about the linebackers, dude. And it starts with Jayshon Barham, because I'll say this about Ernest Hausman. Ernest Hausman, especially in November, was freaking awesome, right? So you have Ernest Hausman running it back. Can you get that version of Ernest Hausman for 12 weeks of a season? Jayshon Barham, man. 12 months ago, we were hearing the Devin Bush comps. And Jayshon Barham was not bad for Michigan last year, but he certainly wasn't Devin Bush impact level. Still, he had 4 TFLs and only 1 sack. I think you can triple those numbers going into 2025.
Well, in the linebacker room together, I'd like to see kind of get it up there. Like, you see the really good rooms like Texas. I mean, what they're able to do producing from that linebacker spot. Ohio State, I don't love giving them credit, but those linebackers were really, really productive for Ohio State. That's a unit. Like, the way Michigan was playing in that linebacker room towards the end of the year, like, again, Ernest Hausman was playing so good, I felt like. But that's still a group that, like, for the talent they have, yeah, the productivity wasn't great, and their ability to make negative plays was not good enough.
They were good, not great last year, right? Can they be great? And I know Jayshon Barham can be great. To me, it's unlocking Jayshon Barham. Year 2 with Wink Martindale, he's a little bit more comfortable with the defense. Just as importantly, Dill, Wink Martindale now is more comfortable with Jayshon Barham. What does he do well? How can we use him to really unlock his potential? If you unlock Jayshon Barham, I'm not going to go as far and say he's going to have like the Abdul Carter impact. I think he can be much closer to that, like the Anthony Hill kind of impact, Dill. Anthony Hill had 17 TFLs and 10 sacks for Texas last year. Jayshon Barham can be sniffing those numbers. I know he's capable of doing it. You don't get the Devin Bush comps unless you're not capable of doing that type of stuff. Last thing I'll say, punting. Punting was horrible last year. Nobody taught it. And we were punting a lot. We had
about it. I mean, the fact that he got up there and basically was like, we were like the worst punting team I've ever seen in the history of
Yeah.
football, like tells you something about how he thought about it. So that is one that, yeah, I don't love talking about punting either. I'll be honest. It's not
Hopefully
my
we don't
favorite
have to talk
thing in the
about it.
world. But like, you got to be able to do it and be serviceable, not what
We
Michigan.
we picked a we picked a bad year to struggle with punting because we were doing an awful lot of punting in 2024. Dill, this is a crazy stat. 16.8 yards per punt return last year given up. That's ludicrous bad. A net punt of 37.3. In comparison, in 2023, we only gave up 6.4 yards per return. Can we get and apparently Michigan loves their punter, Dill. That's huge. It's huge for the defense. All right, we'll get out of here on that. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.